used to do a lot of scuba diving, and this is a story I wrote based on some of my adventures. Death at Brackett's Landing. It all started because I wanted to see a yellow fish in warm, clear water. So I got certified as a scuba diver, and I did see yellow fish in warm, clear water. But I saw other things that had far greater resonance, things that made me stop cold and think very, very hard. Below me, there was a huge octopus, and it was dead. In open water, they're absolutely magnificent, 15 to 30 feet tall, changing colors, changing the texture of their skin, flouncing and gyrating through water. But this one was dead, and it was as if it had been laid out by a tidy undertaker. All of his tentacles were pulled long and straight. But he was white, a ghastly, really horrific white. And there was an orange starfish sitting on one of his tentacles, eating the octopus. It was such a vivid image of that mixture of life and death, and life sustaining itself on death. It doesn't get much bolder than that. I admit some of the allure or the intrigue of scuba diving was managing risk. You knew if you made a mistake, it could be fatal. One weekend, I made 2 dives on Saturday and I made another 2 on Sunday. Monday morning, I was driving to work, and actually a thought popped into my mind that said, God, I didn't die this weekend. I knew scuba divers who died, but the death that was really unsettling was the death of a young man who was newly certified. He was diving Brackett's Landing. It's a dive site just north of Seattle. It's a benign site. There's no current. The water is quite shallow. But it was diving in the Pacific Northwest, and the water is brutally, horribly cold. So cold that if you go into the water without protective gear, hypothermia starts in about 25 to 30 minutes. This young diver geared up, and for some reason he was diving by himself, which was stupid. But he went into the water, and then his dry suit, his protective gear, started leaking. Now, dry suits are fairly reliable. There's a very, very tight seal at the throat, seals at the wrist, so water rarely comes in. But water was pouring into the suit, and the shock of that cold water and the thought this shouldn't be happening, it was too much for him, and so he shot to the surface. He was able to signal to people on shore, and then he sank back under the water. I'm guessing that the cold water, this shouldn't be happening, the rapid ascent, and then falling back down to the bottom. By now, his heart rate had spiked, blood pressure had spiked, and he was breathing faster and faster and faster. And he had that awful feeling that he wasn't getting enough air. Scuba divers panic, and the culmination of that panic is equipment rejection. It doesn't make any sense, but a lot of the equipment is a little awkward and uncomfortable. And when you're scared out of your mind, you want to get back to the familiar, the known. And so divers routinely tear off their face mask. They pull the regulator, the source of oxygen, and discard it. Divers got to him 10 to 12 minutes after he surfaced. It was too late. He was dead. The mask was gone, the regulator was gone, and his air tank was practically full. There were so many things he could have done. He could have gone back up to the surface. He could have kicked and swum to shore. It was a short distance. He could have crawled on his hands and knees to shore. But he did none of those things, and he died. When I think of him, I'm sad, and I'm also angry that nobody drilled into him a safety protocol. Stop, assess, decide, act. And his death rattles me because I don't know what I would have done if my dry suit had leaked. And I am not panic proof. So when I tell this story, I'm listening to those words: stop, assess, decide, act, wanting to embed that protocol into my nervous system. And I tell this story with a hope that as it moves out into the world, people who need it will hear it. They will train themselves, and they will become something like that orange starfish that took sustenance from death. Thank you.